Good morning, YouTube. It is 10 a.m. in the great state of Texas, and we're doing another glitter-ish epoxy bowl, making some glitter here we picked up at the local hobby store. What is this called? Let me see. It's like champagne glitter, can't focus the camera, something like that. Silver champagne, bam. We're going to use a little bit of that. We're going to use some purple. We're going to use some epoxy in this 2.5 quart bucket. Get everything mixed up nice and neat. Picked up this fine glitter because if you use the chunky glitter, it's not going to turn out the way that you want to. So I ended up doing this project sometime in either January or February. It's actually like March 10th or 11ish when I'm doing the commentary for this video. And it's super cold January, February in Texas. We got a little bit of a snowstorm. And if you know anything about epoxy, you have to warm this stuff up or it's like as thick as peanut butter. So I didn't have a good way to warm the epoxy because I've used the heat gun in the past to heat the epoxy and actually have eaten through the plastic. So this is like a makeshift thing where I've got the heat gun going. I made this like little furnace thing in the middle here. So that's what you're seeing here if you're wondering what I'm doing with the heat gun and the epoxy. You got to warm it up because it will not mix well and then you'll get a bad casting. And I kind of didn't mix it the way I needed to. You'll see here in a bit. I'm just here mixing it up. Adding the glitter to it so we can get everything up nice and neat, and poured it in. It looks like it's pouring in nice, but as you'll see here in a little bit, we have a little bit of an issue with the epoxy once we take it out of the pressure pot. So you got to mix it up real good. We got to have it heated. So epoxy and cold weather are not a good combination. So here we go, 4.5 hours later in the pressure pot. Take it out, and the issue I had was I guess I didn't mix it well enough because the epoxy is stuck to the side of the bowl, and obviously here I am trying to get it out. Was unsuccessful, so what we're going to end up having to do is cut the top of that mixing cup off, and then we're going to have to add the waste block and everything else, obviously. So here we are putting the faceplate on. You can clearly still see that I got the 2-quart canister wrapped around the epoxy, which isn't a problem. I've had this happen enough times to where I'm used to that, so I know how to work that problem on the actual lathe itself. So you can see some of the stickiness is still there. So we'll just treat it like any other, project where you just take the superficial layer off, and you obviously have to work through that plasticky part. And it really isn't an issue for the chisel. So I go from using the bowl gouge on the outside, just trying to take that layer off, and then I come back, hit it with a round carbide tool, and then just start getting layer by layer off, getting it into that nice cylindrical shape. And like I said, I think I did this in February, and we had a snowstorm kind of come through. It wasn't like, for Texas, it's a snowstorm. If it snows at all, we're freaking out. So here we are, got a majority of that layer off, so now we're still, working the problem. Having to be a little bit more aggressive with the chisels here, obviously. But we're getting good shavings off, not getting a lot of problems with that, because what I fear the most when we do these castings, when I know that there's an issue with the epoxy, as long as you're not getting that glass, type presentation where if you haven't mixed epoxy well, it kind of chips and then it comes out of it. It's literally like glass. But if you're getting ribbons off, that's how you know that you're doing pretty well. So now we're just trying to work the bottom of it, and obviously going back with a couple of different chisels here, just working the problem. And overall, like I said, we're getting a really good material off, and we're just getting into that nice cylindrical shape that we like. And as you saw from the thumbnail, this one actually turns out pretty nice. So in spite of all the problems that we might have had in the beginning, we're actually having the end project is going to be really, really good. So the horrible thing about doing bowl turning when it's cold outside is, like, if it's below 80 degrees, I start to freak out. So I think I got like 4 or 5 layers on. I got like different types of, I need to get some coveralls. That's what I need to do, and definitely do that next year when we're doing bowl projects in the winter time. So once we get the superficial layer off, now we're just coming back and working the bottom. Obviously my camera work, 3 years on YouTube, and I'm still having trouble with the camera angles and everything. So you can kind of see what I'm doing here. My big head's in the way. Got the face shield on there, obviously. But you can see there, pretty good bowl casting overall once we got that, bucket off of there. So now we're just working the edges, getting everything shaped down real nice and neat the way that we like it. And just getting some pretty good ribbons, some pretty good material off. Everything's going really nice and smooth. And I think for the most part, I didn't have any other issues with this once we got the actual formation of the bowl that we wanted. So good for us for this one. So once we got that down, now we're going to come back and start making the mortise. If you saw a couple of videos back that I did, you know that I kind of messed up where I ended up taking the entire project off the lathe and ended up forgetting to make the mortise. But in this time I was like, okay, I remember to make the mortise this time. So obviously switching back between a couple of different tools, the small and the larger square carbide tool, just getting into the depth that we want, making sure that we have enough material here to where it'll attach to the chuck, and just going back and forth, measuring it a little bit. And like I said, you don't want the mortise to be too large, because then you don't really get a good grip once you flip it onto the chuck. So that's why it's important to come back, remeasure, do all those good things like we usually do. So here we are taking the faceplate off, Ryobi drill, awesome. So boom, now we got a reverse on the chuck, and now we're just going to go ahead and take this waste block off like we usually will do, and coming back and forth with a couple of different chisels. And you know, it's always shocking when I look back on my older videos. I used to just take a chisel and pop the waste block off, but I use such a copious amount of hot glue now, I can't pop the thing off without damaging the bowl itself. So don't be stingy with your glue is what I'm saying, because if you go back and watch some of my older videos, I used to like literally have things fly off the lathe because I didn't know what I was doing. So when you're doing the glue ups, really give a lot of glue, okay? Don't be stingy with your glue. So here we are, once we got the waste block off, now we're just taking that superficial layer off the top of it so we can start the actual gouging portion of it. And you saw earlier in the video, I have like this dirty waste block. It's not a dirty waste block. That's not even the right way to put it. I have a waste block in the middle, but it's not like one clean piece of pine. It's like a hodgepodge of different pieces of board that are put together. And that'll kind of be an issue a little bit later once we start hitting the depth that we want on the bowl itself. That's kind of the bad thing about doing that with some of these projects. It's always good to use a waste block because obviously it saves on epoxy a little bit, but the problem is once you start the gouging portion of it, it's really kind of hard on the chisels because because once you work from epoxy into the different shapes of wood, depending on how you shape them, you get a little bit of an issue with that because it feels a lot different on the chisels. So that is kind of a headache to deal with. So this is a little bit later on in the project. Obviously, we've gotten to a little bit deeper depth here, and now we're just trying to get to the depth of the bottom that we want it to be at before we actually start working the actual side walls of the project. Because obviously what you didn't see in the beginning, because I didn't record the waste block, there's a little piece of epoxy on the bottom that's clear. It's a clear little cube, and then I stack the waste block on top of that just to kind of help the aesthetic and take away from that pine board look that I've done in my previous videos. So that's essentially what we're doing there with that. And now we're just working our way to the bottom. Once we got into the bottom, now I come back and start working the side walls of the actual bowl itself, getting pretty good ribbons, pretty good material off. It's just a tedious process. If you've ever done bowl turning of any kind, and you do some of these this is about a medium-sized bowl that we're doing here, and it's just tedious having to actually gouge out the bowl itself. It's not one of my favorite parts. It just depends. Usually if it's a clean piece of pine board, usually it goes by pretty smooth, but when it's like a mixture of pine board like we did for this one, it's a little bit more tedious because you have to be really careful on how you're using the chisels. So here we are, just again working the sides of the bowl. This is a little bit different angle, and by this time we're almost done with the actual project itself. And then we'll come back, start our sanding part, which you guys all know, sanding is my favorite. If this YouTube channel ever becomes big enough and I get to make t-shirts and stuff, one of them is going to be I love sanding. By then somebody will definitely steal that, if it's not already a t-shirt already. So a little bit different angle. Obviously you can see the good ribbons and material that we're getting off of that. And now we're just doing what I told you that we were doing, working the sides of the bowl. So here we are, and what I ended up doing, or from what I can remember, is I didn't like the side piece. There was like a side portion of the bowl that was kind of like protruding out, and for some reason decided to go back and take a minimal piece off. So once we got all of that done, now this is kind of the aftermath of the actual project itself. Here's the bowl before the sanding. Here's all these good shavings, a mixture of the wood, mixture of the epoxy shavings. And there's my respirator in the back there after huffing and puffing all that. I always love how much material comes off of these projects when you do them. It's always amazing how much material they're actually taking off. So here we are going from 320, 340 all the way up to 1500, and then we're going to come back and hit it with the micro mesh here in a little bit. And I usually like to get the actual workbench cleaned up before I actually start the sanding part, and there, lost my sandpaper there. So here it is. Now we're almost done with the micro mesh, and this turned out absolutely beautiful. Love how this turned out. The purple, the champagne look to it. Now we're gonna hit it with that wood wax, really get the actual shine in there, make that thing pop really nice and shiny. Look at that. It looks absolutely amazing. Love how this looks. Just can't say enough good stuff about this. I love making these glitter bowls, and people might say, well, you're just kind of doing the same project over and over, but every bowl is different. In spite of, you might put it in the same container, you might use a slightly different color, but each one of these are unique. Each one presents with its own problems, and this one turned out absolutely beautiful. Absolutely love how this turned out. So hope you guys really like this project. I know I love doing it. Look at the glitter on that thing. It's absolutely gorgeous. So hope you guys, again, I did this in early 2022, January, February, somewhere around there. You guys are probably watching this in July or June, definitely in the summer sometime. So hope you guys like the project. Hope you got something out of it. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, all that stuff. Give some suggestions of what we should do next on the channel. Overall, really happy with how this turned out. And I'll see you guys in the next project. Peace. Okay, so project is done. Check this guy out. This looks absolutely amazing. And I know I say that for pretty much every project I do, but I'm just like, look, it's just amazing. I'm gonna call it how I see it. But wow, look at the sparkle in this thing, man. Totally looks beautiful. It is February 11th, 2022. You guys are probably gonna watch this in the summer of 2022. And it's freezing here. It's actually like 5:30ish in the morning, February 11th, 2022. So that's why I'm wearing all this stuff. It's, it's my day off, so decided to stay up all night and get this project done. But wow, look at the sparkle. Look how beautiful this looks. I love doing these sparkle bowls. And people might be watching this and go, you kind of do the same thing all the time, but I'm like, hey, I also branch out and do other stuff, but I really like doing these bowls like this. And I love giving them away at work because people love these things. And absolutely gorgeous. Love the sparkle. It's like 5 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, so I can't do the whole sun gleaming through it thing. So I apologize for that. But hope you guys liked it. Hope you got something out of it. Again, looks absolutely gorgeous. I love this thing. So hope you guys are having a good summer. And I'll see you guys in the next project. Okay, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.